I thrifted this piece and honestly wasn't quite sure what to call it. Maybe a stool or a riser or maybe even a footstool. I don't know. Let me know what you think. It looks like a cat may have been gnawing on the side here. It was in rough shape, really filthy. I gave it a good clean. I know it might not look like I did, but I did. And then I sanded all around my stool, just trying to get rid of any excess that may have been lingering there. Then I took out my Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Sweetwater. This came in my Sonnet Maker's box. Most of the products that I'm using in this video are from my box. If you haven't used milk paint before, you mix it in equal parts. I like to use room temperature water. I did 3 tablespoons of water to 3 tablespoons of milk paint, and I like to stir between each addition. Then let it sit for about 10 minutes. More often than not, I do add a little extra powder because I feel like it gives me a better crackle, like not so much a better crackle, but more crackle, if that makes sense. I'm going to give this 2 full coats, and using my embossing gun to dry in between, this is going to really speed up the drying process and bring forward all that beautiful crackle. And once it was dry, I went over the whole thing with some extreme guard that's going to seal everything in and protect my milk paint. This gorgeous masterboard design came in my box. Just look at all these beautiful designs. I had a really hard time figuring out what section I was going to use. I used all this paper in one day. Kid you not. I have so many projects I made just from this one paper. I'm going to cover the top with some liquid patina, and I'm going to spritz my paper and work my paper down into that patina using my fan brush. I did have a little tear here, but I'm not worried about that. I was able to piece it together just fine. And anything vintage is naturally going to have imperfections. And I think that's one thing that I love so much about vintage pieces and thrift flips. I don't have to worry about everything being perfect or making mistakes. Those little flaws, worn edges, and unexpected details are what gives the piece charm and character and a story. Then I sealed in my paper with more liquid patina. And this other beautiful paper came in my box, and I cut it to fit, and I'm going to apply it to each side. Now that everything is dry, I'm going to sand away the excess paper and just clean it up a little bit. And then I'm going to seal it in one more time. I just want to make sure that my milk paint is protected. So I'm using Sweet Pickins oil wax, and I'm going to use the clear, the dark, and I'm also going to use my vintage antiquing paste, and I'm going to work that in around the edges. And this part takes a little bit of time, and so I didn't film all that, but look at all that beautiful crackle, guys. I think this is just such a beautiful project, and I had so much fun making this one. Guys, I love this piece. I just think it turned out so beautiful, and that paper is absolutely gorgeous. If you noticed in the lower left-hand corner near the 1864, it almost looks like a water spot, but that's actually part of the paper design. I'm always so excited to see what papers are going to be in my maker's box because they're consistently so lovely and unique. They always have a special feel to them. And I really think this stool has such a vintage look now. What do you think? I'm also loving that beautiful chippiness in the milk paint. It adds so much texture and age and just a whole lot of charm. I got this little riser, I think from TJ Maxx years ago. I've had it, like I said, for years. And I gave it a good wipe down and then went over it with a coat of Extreme Guard. This is just gonna seal our surface in and prepare it for paint. I'm going to go in with my milk paint. And I just wanted to be sure that I'd get lots of chippiness, but it also wouldn't just flake off. Not entirely sure what the surface is sealed in with. So give it a nice coat, let it dry, and then I'm going to mix up that same milk paint. Actually, I think it was already mixed up from our stool. Yep, it definitely was. And I gave this 2 coats. This beautiful napkin came in my maker's box, and I think at the time that I'm doing this voiceover, it's already gone. I used all of my stuff, like all of my papers are gone. I had so much fun. So I'm cutting this to fit the top of my little stand here, and I'm going to decoupage that right into place using some liquid patina. Real quick, I just want to let you guys know that this video is part of an open playlist and it's hosted by Katie at Lady Red Crafting and Lisa from Our Gray House. And our guest host is Up All Night DIY. Be sure to check out our hosts in the full playlist. I'll have everything linked in the description box. After it's all sealed in and dry, I'm going to take my Sweet Pickins dark wax. I'm going to go over the whole thing. Prior to putting this on, though, I did give it a good sand. You can see I got the legs pretty well. And then when I flip it over, you'll see I got the sides. And I'm going to let this sit for about 20 minutes. It doesn't have to sit that long, but I've let it sit up to an hour, just, busy and forgot about it. And it's just fine. And I'll just wipe it back with a cloth. I added some of my vintage antiquing paste. This takes a minute though. When you work with the paste, you really got to take your time and blend and reapply, sometimes adding some more dark wax on it or clear wax to pull some of it back. It just takes a little bit of time to build up the color. I think this refresh is so beautiful. I love this piece and I'm curious, how would you use it in your home? The only thing I think of is maybe putting a candle on it, but shoot me some ideas. I'd love to know how you would style this. Dollar Tree used to have these silver platters. This I've had for years, and I painted it a while back in the color Plaster by Waverly. This paper came in my Sonnet's Maker's Box. I'm just using my fingernail to figure out how much I need to cut. Once it's cut, I got my liquid patina out, and I'm going to decoupage this right into the center. I'm curious if you have any tips or tricks on how to decoupage with recycled paper. I feel like I get a lot of wrinkles and air bubbles. What medium do you use? Or do you like to use water? I go back and forth between using water and not, and I can't really pinpoint what's working as far as getting rid of the bubbles and wrinkles. This I didn't seem to have any issues with, and I didn't use any water for this one. A few days after I got this box, I got my box from Rehatched Designs, and she had sent Decoupage varnishing glue by Pintart. That stuff is amazing. I love it. I am hooked for life. I know I am. Once I got this on, as you can see as I'm going, I'm adding more of my patina over the top. As I'm doing this voiceover though, I'm really thinking that water is my worst enemy when it comes to this paper. Leave me a comment what works for you and what doesn't. So a few days later, this sat, and I was so excited. My package came from Tina at Rehatched Designs. And this transfer book, I think it's called Wild Blowmen, and it's filled with all kinds of beautiful designs. It has butterflies, all sorts of florals, birds, frogs, dragonflies, and so many small images you could use on just about anything. And I think it's one of those collections that sparks ideas the moment you start flipping through it. I think this transfer booklet is absolutely beautiful, and I was so excited when I opened my box and saw it inside. It's packed with so much inspiration and so many little details to create with. And so I chose this beautiful bouquet in the back filled full of wildflowers, and I placed that right into the center of my platter and began rubbing and pulling back on that vellum sheet and just worked my way all the way down to the bottom, and then lifted my vellum sheet and went back over to burnish it down. I just had to add this little frog. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. I set it off to the side a little bit. I didn't want it in dead center. You know, that feel like things look better when you off center them a bit. And these transfers go on like butter, just oh so smooth. And I placed this dragonfly at the top and then this little daisy, and then went over the whole thing to seal everything in with some extreme guard. For this project, I'm giving it a little of both worlds using pieces from my Sonnets box and my Rehatched Designs box. Going back to my Sonnets box now, I am taking the color Manor Green by Fusion. It has both a primer and a sealer, and I'm going to go around all the edges of my tray, covering that outer rim and working right up against the paper. And I'm going to give this 2 coats. And of course, I let that dry, and then I took Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1, and I'm going to give it a thin layer. I'm going to go over the whole image. I'm also going over the sides, covering that Manor Green. I want the whole thing to have crackle. And this is going to sit for about 30 minutes. It just has to be tacky before applying Step 2. Now, of course, if you don't like crackle, you could totally skip this. I just want this to look old, and that's what this collaboration is all about, turning things into vintage. Now I'm going in with my crackle step 2, again, about 30 minutes later. I want to make sure your crackle step 1 is tacky. And this is the layer that actually creates those beautiful age cracks as it dries. I'm going to apply a nice even coat, being careful not to go too thick, and also trying not to keep going back over the same areas, because this can disrupt the crackle and you won't get that natural vintage look. I like to think of it as just laying it down and letting it do its thing. And off camera, I use my embossing gun to speed up the process. You could also, if you don't have one, you can just let it sit and dry and you'll still get lots of crackle. And you don't necessarily need an embossing gun. You can also use a hair dryer. I've had people ask me that before. A hair dryer works just fine. And you know, sometimes I think it works better, especially the hair dryers where you can go from hot to cool. I think that speeds it up. And so once that was dry, I went over the whole thing with my Sweet Pickins dark wax, and that's setting into all that lovely crackle. You can see how it added age to my paper. And then I took my vintage antiquing paste and went all around the sides, just kind of darkening up the inner side of the frame. If I get too much, I can wipe some of it back using some more of that oil wax. This Heavy Metallic by Paint Couture is in the color Rich Gold. This came from my Rehatched Designs box, and I'm going to go all along the frame. And this is also going to settle into those cracks. And I'm just doing this in small sections here, wiping back as I go. Then I decided to use a small artist brush and just draw a thin line where the paper meets the paint. Then I took some Robin Buff and just highlighted all those raised details. Off camera, I added a black line right next to the gold one. And I just love this one. It has that dark, moody feel, but the soft pink paper keeps it light and romantic. And the green frame pairs so beautifully with the florals. And I really feel like this was the perfect fusion of both boxes brought together into one unique piece. And as always, I'm going to leave you a quick recap. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you loved it, hype me up. And I would love for you to subscribe and turn on that notification bell if you don't want to miss another video from me. Thank you for spending time with me today. Until the next one, bye.